Yes, welcome back. Now it's time for today's keynote speaker, and that is Coro Strandberg from Canada, President for Strandberg Consulting and Chair Canadian Purpose Economy Project. Coro is a recognized Canadian leader in ESG, purpose and sustainability, with over 40 years of experience advising businesses, industry association and governments on strategies to advance a sustainable future. Please, Caro, very welcome here. I'm very curious to listen to your presentation.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and congratulations to the Sustainability Award winners. When I was contacted about the opportunity of making this presentation, I thought of it as a thought experiment in that I'd never really put my mind to how quality can enable purpose in an organization, and in so doing, put organizations on a path to create a better world. So I was really delighted for this opportunity, and I was surprised with what I found in looking into this question. In my 40 years of advising organizations on sustainability, I've seen quality management create conditions for sustainability in organizations, starting with ISO 9000 and then 14001. And when I was starting out advising organizations on sustainability back in the day, as many of us did, we turned to quality management principles to understand how can we actually embed and unlock sustainability in organizations. And so that got me thinking, is now the time for the great leap forward for the quality management profession to think about how it can go beyond those very important management systems to consider how can quality management play a fundamental and critical role in accelerating purpose in organizations. As mentioned, I'm the chair of the Canadian Purpose Economy Project. I'll say a little bit about us. And we define a social purpose business, or you could say organization, as one whose reason for being is to create a better world. We have many other ways of defining social purpose in business, and they're on the screen here. But basically, social purpose businesses unlock all of their enterprise capabilities, their talents, their resources, their partnerships and influence in pursuit of their purpose. And then this social purpose acts as the company's North Star, helping it steer and navigate through turbulent times, such as those that we're in, and mobilizing employees and stakeholders around it. I would say this type of
आसिफ यहाँ पे
I
करीब
would
करीब
say
1.5 घंटा
this-
लग जाए
somebody's
और
jumping in
हमको
here.
बुलाएंगे, यहीं आना, हम यहीं रुके रहेंगे. 1 मिनट.
All right. I was saying this type of organization doesn't just manage employees and stakeholders, but mobilizes their employees and stakeholders to help them achieve their purpose. Our vision at the Canadian Purpose Economy Project is that by 2030, 1/4 of Canadian businesses are adopting, disclosing, and authentically embedding a social purpose across their operations and relationships, and collaborating with others to achieve it. We believe that this will then be the tipping point when social purpose business becomes the norm. Our idea is to transform business model logic from a sole focus on profits to a focus on purpose, where profits enable and drive the purpose, and of course are still essential to that. And we have, through years of consultation, we developed this formula for how we might create the enabling environment, the conditions whereby social purpose becomes the norm. I'm not going to speak to all of these, although I'm happy afterwards to say more to any of you about our organization if that's of interest. But our ambition is headed towards creating a purpose economy, which you have to imagine is a very audacious vision. A very audacious ambition, whereby a purpose economy is an economy powered by the pursuit of long-term well-being for all, in which business and regulatory and financial systems foster an equitable, flourishing, resilient future. So that is our grand aim, is to start the seeds of progress, the seeds of change to drive towards that purpose economy. Let me say a little bit about more about social purpose business or a social purpose organization by differentiating between mission, vision, and purpose. Starting at the bottom, the purpose is why your business exists or why your organization exists. Your vision is where you're headed in the future, hence vision. And your mission is what your company, your organization does every day to bring your purpose to life. So these are differentiated terms. There's often conflation around these terms. And I invite all of you to think, what is the purpose of your own organization? And have you defined it? If you have, then purpose becomes the fulcrum, the focal point for your organization to structure your strategy through setting a vision, through creating a mission, through making that the context in which strategy is developed and directed towards, to build your culture, a purpose enabling culture, to drive your brand, your values, and your metrics. And all of these things pull together to help the organization realize its purpose. And just a little on how an organization might then define its purpose. We use this naturally, a Venn diagram, where on the one hand, the organization considers what does the world need? And on the other hand, who you are, what is your unique superpower, and what do you bring to the table? And where those two intersect is where your purpose can be found. And we use the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure are familiar to all of you, as the route by which organizations can understand what does the world need. And of course, these UN SDGs indicates or sets a context in which organizations can prioritize 1, 2, or 3 or more of these. I find on average organizations use about 3 to 5 to prioritize through stakeholder consultation to find out what they can most realistically set their purpose towards. Here's an example of a large Canadian company that sells into US and Asia as well, and they're a meat product company with about 13,000 employees. This is how they defined their purpose. You can see they identified the needs of the world. They are a meat products company, so they're concerned with food security, climate change, and its effect on their operations, animal health, of course, nutrition, a sustainable food system. And what they identified as the assets that they bring to the table is they're Canada's largest value-added meat company. They have leading Canadian brands. They're from farm to fork. They own the value chain of the business, and they have world-class processing plants, and they're in creating a high growth market. So they identified their purpose as to, quote, raise the good in food. So that's just an example of how one company has used the SDGs to help frame their purpose. So a little bit more on purpose. A purpose is, as I've said, a company's societal reason to exist. We use the language of social. It could be environmental purpose. It could be a socio-ecological purpose. It could be a sustainable purpose, but it's basically a purpose to create a better world. And it's different from corporate social responsibility or environment social governance or sustainability in that they direct the company towards managing their social and environmental risks and improving their social or environmental performance. So in that sense, purpose being the company's reason to exist, you can see quite readily that CSR and ESG is not that. We would say purpose is the G in ESG, which is to say under governance. So here's some sample social purpose statements from around the world that I've just pulled together because I thought these brands might be familiar to you. BASF, a chemistry company, a chemical producing company, their purpose is to create chemistry for a sustainable future. And Danone, you'd know them as a yogurt brand, perhaps. Their purpose is to bring health through food to as many people as possible. And Wholesome, the cement company, to build progress for people and the planet. So we have different purpose statements. They look different depending on your industry. And just briefly on the business case for social purpose, there are no longitudinal research studies on how how purpose creates value over the long term, because this idea of businesses defining their purpose and then bringing it to life in their organization is, relatively speaking, a new phenomenon. However, we have many data points from different more recent studies on why on the benefits businesses are realizing from this pursuit. And here they are at a glance. I would say all in businesses that go this direction experience double the employee engagement, triple the growth, and quadruple the ability for customers, the likelihood for customers to buy from the company, to stay loyal to the company, and to recommend the company to their friends and peers. You might be delighted to see that the ISO itself has created governance for organizations, and in their guideline, in their standard, they have centered purpose as the primary governance principle. So this is an ISO reference that you can all use. At the Canadian Purpose Economy Project, we have conceived of 7 steps by which an organization can develop their purpose and then implement it. And I will show you here. This is where the rubber hits the road, whereby after defining the purpose, the organization would then create a social purpose implementation plan. And here's an example, while Maple Leaf Foods was a publicly traded company, here's an example of a Crown Corporation, a government-owned company, a state-owned company. And this is this company has a social purpose. It's a company that's mandate is to conduct and manage gambling, responsible for the province of British Columbia, where I live. And they have created an integration roadmap for 3 years. This roadmap was adopted by the board of directors. I sat on this company's board for many years. This was adopted by the board, and you can see they've created a scorecard action plan by focus area, looking at business model, governance and leadership, people and culture, and different aspects by which they are bringing their purpose to life. We looked at the state of social purpose in Canada amongst large corporations. For this, we turned to the TSX 60, that's our Toronto Stock Exchange 60, which is an index of 60 large Canadian corporations that are publicly traded. And we found, to our surprise, that 40% of them have a purpose to create a better world. That was a much higher number than we expected. And we found, however, disappointingly, that of the 24, only 4 have explicit board oversight, meaning to say only 4 demonstrated that their board of directors had terms of reference that had the board providing oversight of the social purpose, particularly embedding it in strategy and culture and assigning it to the governance committee for detailed review. I have a note here about global results. Our research was a primary research study. We then looked at secondary research and found that about 40% of UK companies listed on the FTSE 300 have a social purpose, and 40% of Australian companies listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, 40% of those 100 companies have a social purpose. And roughly speaking, it looks like in emerging markets, as we would call it, about 40% have a social purpose as well. So there's a considerable take-up of this concept in business. So if our findings in Canada are any indication, it's very possible that these businesses have adopted a societal purpose to create a better world, but perhaps the board is not governing it. And if the board is not governing it, it's likely not embedded in strategy or in the culture or in the organization overall, and it's likely then not a driver of performance for that organization. We see that as being a possible fiduciary risk for boards and organizations if the board doesn't know the purpose of the organization that they're governing, they may not be able to act in the organization's best interest. So we basically see that, and this is where I'm connecting purpose maybe to quality, that purpose needs an operating system. Purpose belongs inside an operational system, and it needs to be built into its policies, its processes, and its audits, rather than being situated outside the organization as branding or philanthropy. Or it perhaps then runs the risk that it becomes purpose washing. You might have heard of greenwashing. Purpose washing is where the organization states that it has a purpose, but is not actually operationalizing it. And so we can perhaps wonder today whether quality managers can help operationalize purpose. And I hope all of you are thinking in your seats or wherever you are that the answer to that might be yes. Here's a couple of examples of businesses that are bringing it to life. And now here's a cooperative. This is Coast Capital. They're a national federal Canadian credit union, which is to say a financial institution. And they have identified their purpose and put it together in this mountaintop, you would say. Their purpose is to build better futures together. And they want to help people and businesses unlock financial opportunities and grow their incomes. And they have a focus on helping people grow their incomes. And here's an example of how this organization created a purpose decision lens. So with this decision lens, they ask whether each decision or activity or initiative helps drive the purpose, and or perhaps is it neutral or even so contra to the purpose? Does it unlock financial opportunities and help people grow their incomes? And if the decision, initiative, or product is purpose neutral or purpose contra, they invite their employees to think, how might this be changed? How can it be renegotiated or adjusted to imagine what if this initiative could drive a better future? And this, to them, is a means for creating innovation in the organization. And here's an example where they applied this purpose decision lens to their product offerings, and they realized that many of their products weren't actually driving purpose. And so they created this product whereby if you use this banking product, this Elevate checking product, that you can then access 13,000 courses for free online. And this is a fundamental part of the value proposition. And they're finding that people who use this product are spending about 8 hours a month on this course platform. Here's another example, Armor Valve. They are a valve producing company obsessed with quality, I might add. And for them, their purpose is to transform infrastructure for a healthy, thriving planet. And they, this is a screenshot from their most recent purpose report. And they have, by functional area, you can see on the left, identified routes by which purpose can be embedded in those functions. And they have plans for how to go beyond that in future years. I'm not going to speak to each one in the interest of time, but it's an example of how they are trying to operationalize purpose through functional engagement. They've also, believe it or not, created a purpose theory of change. You can see in the top left, they have identified the problem that their purpose is directed at, and then how they're going to address the problem by focusing their efforts, the changes they want to see. And by 2050, they hope their purpose will be realized and that their energy and industrial clients will be ensuring a thriving place with affordable, sustainable power and products, fostering an equitable and sustainable, equitable and stable environment. And this organization is a proud, I guess, user of quality management systems, because they fundamentally want to make sure that people who use businesses that use these and rely on these valve products don't create any safety incidents. So while they have been quality obsessed, today they're building on that tradition of quality to be purpose obsessed. I'm just going to flash this image to you. I'm not going to go into detail again in the interest of time, but Patagonia is a brand, a global brand known by many. They they're American company, and they make outdoor apparel for the most part. They're in business to save the planet. And they have created a quality formula you see here, by which they are bringing their purpose to life in how they produce and manufacture their products, from design to manufacture to how the product is used. So purpose is a thread through quality. Now, follow me here. Those were examples of businesses that are defining their purpose to create a better world. But what if we went from this idea of a social purpose business to applying this concept of social purpose, of social benefit, to anything an organizational does? What about any process? What's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of a project? What's the purpose of a department? What's the purpose of a decision, of a product? What's the purpose of anything? And if we are answering that question from a societal point of view, you can start to believe then that quality, taking this lens to its work, can stand up purpose across anything in organizational enterprise and help put organizations and society on a path to a sustainable future. But let's go a little further. What about if we apply this idea not just to a business, to anything in organizational pursuit, but what about if we thought about the social purpose of an entire sector or of a profession? What is the social purpose of the chemistry industry? What's the social purpose of cement? What's the social purpose of forestry, of manufacturing, of the HR profession, of the risk management profession? Like, what happens if we applied social purpose to entire sectors? Well, let me introduce to you here the Canadian Standards Association, CSA group. You can do a screen grab here, meaning to say you can scan that on your phone and go right to SPE 116, which is the number of this guidance. I collaborated with them to create guidelines for how industry, sector, and professional associations can bring help their members move forward on ESG, environment, social governance, sustainability, or the sustainable development goals. And within that guidance, you can see number 19 is as part of this benchmark that's being created for global associations, although produced by a Canadian standards group, has in it a set of practices by which an organization consider whether, the association has adopted a social purpose as its reason to exist, and does it encourage its members to adopt a social purpose. Imagine if a sector or profession did that. Then we would have amassed the army to put humanity on a sustainable path. And to me, that's a very exciting vision where we can actually have sectors then start to, by mobilizing their members to adopt a societal purpose and bring it to life, entire sectors can be sectors for good. So we then land again on another page reflecting on quality management and how it turns purpose into action. Businesses often treat purpose, in our experience, as we saw with the TSX 60, they often treat it as an aspirational message rather than an operational imperative. With applying quality management, that can change that by integrating purpose into the core, the fundamental management system of the organization, translating that purpose statement into policies and objectives, requirements, process controls, metrics, and audits. This then would close the gap between stated purpose, and as we can see, roughly 40% of organizations around the world are moving in this direction, but perhaps there's a gap between their statement of this purpose and how this is lived practice in organizations. So perhaps quality managers can be the one to shape the future of purpose in business. And I think as I reflect on it, we need quality managers to help us in this quest. As I've said, in my experience, quality management professionals have always led the way for effective governance and effective operations and delivery. As I reflect in my experience from 9001 to 14001 and subsequent operational management systems. So now the quality management profession is uniquely positioned to turn what we will call social purpose from a slogan into a system. So you can then be ones to hardwire purpose into the way organizations define, measure, and improve quality. And perhaps we can reimagine quality beyond efficiency and sustainability, but as the discipline, the singular discipline that makes purpose real, that makes it auditable, and to continuously better, make it continuously better to improve the world. So perhaps this is the great leap forward, whereby in another 5 years or so, I might be able to join your conversation here to see how you've stepped up to the plate to secure purpose for organizations, to help them consider that they need to know why they exist so that your work can be applied against that purpose. And then you could help operationalize purpose throughout an organization. And as I've said then, help to put humanity on a sustainable course by bringing organizations' influence, reach, and capacity to bring their purpose to life through collaboration with NGOs and governments and academics. And by this collaboration, by directing the organization's enterprise to bring their purpose to life, we can create a sustainable world. But I think only if quality managers join the grand project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cora. Very interesting to listen. I recognize a lot in what you are saying to what we are thinking about and talking about more and more in quality. From a quality perspective, as you probably know, quality is defined as meeting the needs and expectation among customer. And by enlarging the way of looking at customer, we see a very strong correlation between sustainability and quality. First of all, we have understood, or many companies have understood, that customer is not just the end customer, is everyone that is affected by what we are doing, and that brings quality out in the society too. Second, most organizations, I hope every organization, has a purpose that is more than just here and now. It's also about having sustainable success into the future. And that means that future customer is also very important, and future customer in a wider perspective involving society when we talk about future generation. So this become a very logical approach. So if the purpose of an organization is bigger than just here and then we automatically are into sustainable thinking. But one of the big challenges I think today is that we can also see that people, sadly, an organization have got into a more short-term way of looking at things. Here in Europe, I'm coming from Sweden, we can see, for instance, younger generation, 5-10 years ago, there was much more thinking long-term and from a sustainability perspective. Now, probably due to the rather unsure global situation, unpredictable world, high speed of change, it's more difficult. And we could see similar in companies, especially when there are some crisis approaches and so on. It's very easy that organization bring into a shorter and shorter perspective in their thinking. How do you think we can handle this situation? How could we keep on looking forward in a situation that we don't know what's really happening tomorrow? We could have politicals that come out with new decisions tomorrow. We know that from the last year that a lot happens very fast. How could we stay long-term thinking and that way bring sustainability closer into our purpose?
Well, sounds like you've given me a very grand questions. So let me see if I can tackle that, which is to say that's actually the role that purpose plays. In that purpose for an organization is enduring. Like it's enduring, it's the organization's reason to exist. So if it's defined its purpose and then explained what, raise the good in food, that's a very short purpose statement. So you have to explain what that means. You need to, we call that a narrative, but you need to describe how that purpose creates value for the business, for customers, but also for society. And that's the differentiating factor, is that these purpose statements create value for society, not just business and customers. And I heard you speak to the focus on customers. But that said, these purposes are enduring statements. And with the board governing that purpose, they need to then put their mind to what's the strategy to bring that purpose to life. And then the purpose then gets embedded in the corporate strategy. It gets embedded in executive incentives, metrics, and then into the culture driven in that fashion. But what we find businesses, leaders that are operating under a purpose statement in turbulent times, both through the pandemic and now with the geopolitical environment that we're seeing today, leaders are saying that their purpose acts as their North Star, and it helps them navigate turbulence. It's fundamentally a route to navigating turbulence and to enable agile decision-making. If the employees understand what that purpose is and they're equipped to help bring that purpose to life, and then it enables organizations to make rapid pivots if needed and other things. So it's fundamentally a tool for navigation through challenging times. The other point I would make about the purpose is that is the question, because you talk about shareholder value or financial value. As we find that organizations with a purpose, their relationship to profitability, there are sort of two types. Many businesses are defining these purpose statements because they see it as a route to profitability. And some organizations are defining these statements whereby their purpose transcends profitability. So we have these different sort of types of approaches or logic models in terms of the relationship to purpose, but both of them would, different types would say that purpose isn't the reason, profitability isn't the reason the organization exists, but it's purpose.
Thank you. Another experience from quality that I think is very important to bring into this discussion, that is what we see historically from a more company perspective, but I think that is reusable when we talk about sustainability. That is, the more we involve people in actions and work that really make a difference, the easier it to get things going on. And we talk about continuous improvement in quality. And if we look at the world-class companies that we are studying, they have actually involved everyone. And everyone is part of improving their daily work, and together with their colleagues improving the processes of an organization. And that is not just something that result in good results and better performance, but it's also build a culture and it build like a meaningfulness for people. If you just go to work to do your work, it's completely different to if you go to work to do your work, but also to improve your work. And I believe that this is something that is very important when we talk about sustainability, environment, and so on. How can we better involve everyone to achieve that? What is your ideas about this? And how, when you work with purpose, it's one thing to work with executive leadership in organizations and so on. But how do we bring this out to people, and how do we involve people in a powerful way? So we build positive energy, commitment, motivation, joy.
I just have to say, +1, or let's just double down on what it is that you just said, but maybe I'll elaborate a little bit from a purpose point of view. What purpose brings to the table for employees is meaning. Because now they have a societal purpose that, they know what it is that they are contributing to. For organizations to really get the benefit of employee engagement around the purpose, aka employee productivity, and employee willingness to recommend to others to come and work there. But to get the benefit of engagement, of course, the purpose has to be part of the culture. And so the organization needs to go, if it's just defined, some organizations, by the way, have an implicit purpose, but they haven't defined it. I think that that's the case for a lot of organizations, but defining it makes it formal. And then what you're what you ought to be doing is educating your employees on that purpose and equipping them to play their role to bring that purpose to life and helping them understand what that connectivity is to that purpose. And basically have this idea of mobilizing your employees to help bring the purpose to life. And that's fundamental. And I feel I have to, just in case you don't ask me this question about customers, I feel I have to say this about customers, because you helped me understand that quality is directed at the customer experience, if you will. But you also said, let's zoom out and everyone's a customer. Employees are customers, future generations are customers. So I appreciate you take this grand view of what is a customer. But let me say, in terms of the traditional customer, whether that's a consumer, B2B, or a B2B environment, B2C, B2B environment, retail or business to business environment. Similarly, the social purpose business needs to mobilize those customers to help them realize their purpose. And so that's a very interesting question from a quality point of view. You're not just like serving customers like in the old way, you're motivating customers to be excited about what your business is doing. Maybe you're equipping your customers, your consumers to play a role. And now you're giving them something value added that because you're looking at the customer experience from the social purpose point of view, you're bringing more value to your customer. And then when you can mobilize your customer to help you achieve your purpose, you will be further along in realizing your purpose and benefiting from customers' likelihood to buy from you, recommend, and stay loyal through difficult times. So it can be a tool for animating the customer experience as well. And it's frankly a necessary tool because businesses need to bring all of their stakeholders with them to help bring their purpose to life, because these are very grand purpose statements that I see. I see businesses adopting a purpose to reducing income inequality. Well, you can't just do that on your own, working in your own silo as a business. So then they start to do systems change around their purpose. And Maple Leaf Foods is doing systems change on food security, on sustainable agriculture, on shift to plant-based foods and other things. So these businesses need to bring their value chain along, their customers along, employees and governments and academics and others to, and NGOs and nonprofit groups to help them realize their purpose. So these are very grand projects that businesses then need to pivot towards.
Yeah, what you now say fits very, very well with our experience. We can see that the way of looking at customers, it has moved from, that we said before, the ones we create value for to the ones we create value together with. This involvement even with the customer, when it's possible. Of course, it depends on what kind of relation we are talking about, but very often it's more like an collaboration with customers that is possible, and then we can another involvement and understanding for what we are doing. Another thing
and
here,
I have to say that's a driver of innovation.
Yes, absolutely.
What company doesn't want to innovate?
Yeah,
and if you're not innovating your company by 10% a year, in 10 years, you might well be out of business. So anyways, these collaborations are drivers of innovation fundamentally. Sorry.
And from a customer perspective, it's also a very important driver of loyalty, customer loyalty, because when you collaborate with your customer, of course, you build another strength in the relationship that in today's fast-changing, unpredictable situation probably is more important than ever. It's about trust.
You can ask all of that, and you could turn suppliers into customers.
Yes.
You could, through this process, you could turn, well, as I said, your employees into customers. You could turn your stakeholders into customers by pursuing this kind of approach. Like, in other words, who's not a customer?
Yeah, what you said here about suppliers, I think is very, very important, because that's something we can see clearly today. We can see in some of the world-class organizations, we can see that for a long, long time they had been focusing a lot on supplier loyalty and building strong relations with their suppliers. But most companies have had a rather short-time supplier perspective, pressing prices and so on. But in today's world, when we can see from a European perspective, certainly there are more and more companies moving back their suppliers to Europe, because we are not sure what's happening nowhere at the planet today. And that means that the competition about the suppliers is increasing dramatically, and then it doesn't work to have a purchasing strategy that is about to try to push the suppliers to offer the lowest price. Instead, it's so important to build relations, develop those relations, and build long time loyalty, and that makes great sense to this too. Everyone is part of this
Absolutely.
purpose.
Absolutely. And might I add, talking about suppliers, is that businesses tend not to know the purpose of their suppliers. Now, isn't that an interesting question? You can imagine now putting out an RFP where you just ask, what's your website? Where's your organization based, and what's the purpose of your organization? And if the customer, in this case, the customer starts asking the supplier, what is the supplier's purpose? That then becomes a catalyst for suppliers to go figure out what their purpose is so they can answer that question. So just different ways of showing up to amplify and accelerate purpose in organizations. And that's something else that organizations are well equipped to do, is to, if you will, spread the word of the gospel on this idea in business, and look around to see if your customers are businesses, can you equip them to adopt a purpose? And then your customer and the business or organization can collaborate on a shared purpose. So if you help your customers have a purpose, if you help your suppliers have a purpose, now we have the shared purpose, and now we're able to really drive progress on it. And that will create value for every organization in the value chain that you bring along.
Yes, I totally agree. Thanks a lot. I wish we had much more time, because this discussion is extremely important. I hope that you can get closer and collaborate with us and be involved in our think tank work and so on, because I see from your presentation it was great to listen to, but there are so many similarities, and I think we have so much to learn from each other. And I think a very important thing is that the different organizations that works for a better future collaborate much more, because that makes it even easier to convince people that don't really see this yet. So thanks a lot. And now I will leave over to Willy, because now I am very curious about the winners of this year's IAQ Quality Sustainability Award.